So my parents came to Swami in the mid to late 60s, and the backstory to that is my maternal grandfather was a disciple of a very revered Guruji in Kerala. He was into practice of yoga, meditation, had his own ashram, and very serious spiritual aspirant and a very serious teacher for all the aspirants. And my maternal grandfather was attracted given his spiritual leanings. And when it had come time for this Guruji to shed his mortal coil, he called my maternal grandfather and said, henceforth, since I am not going to be around in this physical frame, the Lord himself who has come to Puttaparthi, I believe his words were, Narayana himself has come to Puttaparthi, has taken an avatar. My maternal grandfather's name is Gauridas, and so true to his guru's direction, etc., he sought to go meet Swami in Puttaparthi, and I believe this was early 60s when travel was not the most easiest. And when he arrived in Parthi, Swami welcomed him, gave him a chance of the coveted interview, and he said, the reason you are here is because of the blessings of your Guru, nothing else. And blessed him profusely, and of course he was fully attracted to Swami, his mission, and so on and so forth. He was a very, very ardent follower of Mahatma Gandhiji, took part in the freedom struggle actively, had been to the Dandi March, participated in the Karachi Congress, and I think my mother still has the Lati or the Dandi from those days. So it's heirloom in the family, and that's how my mother's family slowly got attracted into Swami's fold. And my mother back in the day was probably in her late teens or early 20s, and that's how my mother's side came into Swami's fold. My dad was contemporary of Dr. Gadia at the medical college. Dr. Gadia, as you know, had a very missionary zeal about Swami's message and mission and so on. And my dad, being a man of science, was naturally averse to Swamiji's spirituality, and being a medical student, the focus was on learning the science of medicine and so on. So he was kind of put back by Dr. Gadia's zeal, and he didn't follow through on what this person is and let me learn and so on. But later on, when my paternal grandfather wanted to go attend a discourse of Swami in Chennai, he had asked my dad to drive him to this venue. He was a chief presidency magistrate in Chennai, so he was somebody in town, given to the official paraphernalia of a big residence, horse-mounted guards, people saluting him and giving him the due attention, if you will, because he was somebody in the judicial system.
His name?
Shamdas. And so he was given to spiritual leanings as well, my paternal grandfather, and he was a follower of Paramahamsa Yogananda. So he was given to spiritual practices, meditation, so on and so forth. So when this invitation came, he wanted to go hear this discourse, and Dad was tasked with driving him and his colleague to this venue, and he found himself clapping and enjoying the bhajan that Swami was leading. And in my dad's recollection, 1,000, 2,000 members in the audience following Swami's lead in the bhajan and clapping away in gusto. And my dad's reaction was, how can this one person lead 1,000 in such a beautiful voice? And how did he make me also clap and sing, being as ours as I was, and totally predisposed to the message of Swami, or predisposed in a negative way. So I think the wheels were set in motion. Like there is something here in this Swami that we don't understand, and the beautiful voice captured his heart, and the singing with gusto, was really soul touching in his description. So that was his first introduction to Swami, and he kept his own scientific skepticism, if you will, being a man of medicine. And when the marriage alliance was talked about between the two families, my maternal grandfather was keen that Swami bless this alliance, bless the wedding and so on. And he had sent a letter to Swami, of course prayers as well, and they were eagerly waiting to have a word from Swami to indicate that they can proceed with the alliance and the marriage and so on.
And this was in which year?
This was probably in 65, 66, thereabouts.
Okay.
I may not be perfect in my recollections of the date because I was not on the planet. And so while they were waiting, my paternal grandfather asked a very pointed question. Him being a magistrate, judge and all that, he is used to examining very critically. And so he asked my maternal grandfather, what if Swami refuses to bless, and what's going to happen then? Because we as families are interested and we want to move ahead, and I appreciate your devotion and faith to Swami. And so he couched it in as polite diplomatic language as he could. My maternal grandfather's response is even to this day is very inspiring to all of us in the family. He said, our Swami will never put us in a situation where our interest and our well-being is compromised. It's interesting to me as well as inspiring that he never once paraded his faith, saying, I believe in him, therefore he will respond. This is our faith. You have no business to tell us what we can believe in or not believe in. He said none of those things. He said, look, we are sure as daylight, that Swami will never compromise our well-being. So that really touched my paternal grandfather's heart. He was much older than my paternal grandfather, probably 10, 15 years older than my. So he had a respect for his age and seniority, even though he was a magistrate and so on. So the word did come from Swami that his blessings are there and to proceed. My parents got married and they wanted to go seek blessings after the marriage, and that's when both the families went together for the first time to Parthi.
So your parents' names?
So my dad, Dr. Vijay Kumar, my mother, Dakshayani. So this was in 67 when they went to see as a family, to see Swami as a family, and the public transportation back then isn't what it is today, and it took a long, arduous journey to get to Parthi. And my paternal grandfather, as I told you, he was chief magistrate and born and bred in Chennai, given to all the creature conveniences of living in an urban city. So he was warned before going to Parthi that there is no indoor plumbing of any kind. That would naturally mean that early morning he would have to go into the open air fields and relieve himself and so on. So he was mentally prepared that this will be how it is in Parthi, and so he had prepared himself. And not only that, he made sure that nobody in his office knew where he was going, given his position in the judicial system and given his own preconceived notions of how he would be perceived, him going to see a young Baba, as it were, in those days. And so he made sure that people knew that he was on vacation. So when they arrived in Parthi after a long journey, Swami appeared briefly in the veranda for darshan. I'm sorry, it's in the balcony, first floor. So it was very brief. As soon as they had arrived, they had seen Swami, and so they went into the shed, which was the only accommodation back then. We're talking 1967, and they were just parking their luggage and figuring out how they should organize and settle down and so on, when this gentleman by name Suraya, and most of folks who have lived in the ashram or have known about him over the years, he had been a resident of the ashram for many, many decades, if I'm not mistaken. Tall gentleman. So he came shouting my paternal grandfather's name and saying, so and so, a judge from Chennai, is he here? And so my grandfather's reaction was, how did they find out I'm here? He had strictly kept it under wraps, and besides the family, I don't think he told his friends that he was going to see Swami. And so when Sri Suraya presented himself in front of my grandfather, he said, Swami sent me with the keys to this newly constructed apartment behind the mandir, and he asked me to tell you that these apartments have an attached bathroom. So in my dad's recollection, the cement had barely dried in the bathroom in this newly constructed apartment, and so they were probably the very first ones to occupy that. And so how did Swami know his designation and his station in life, and that he had this, not fear, but the trepidations of how to manage his daily needs in a village without indoor plumbing? The process of transformation had kicked in. I think the very next day he came and met them and said, you're all tired, I will come and meet you tomorrow. You settle down in this apartment and take rest. And I believe construction was still going on in the nearby apartments and so on, and so this big truck had come to unload the construction jelly. Swami asked the driver of the truck, so he said, why did you not arrive in time? So the truck driver said, well, we were held up at the check post. So he said, oh, you could have given 2 rupees and they would have let you pass. He meant 2 rupees as a bribe, right? And then he himself jokingly said, we should not talk about this, the judge is here.
Oh.
This was their introduction to Swami, and they were so charmed and enthralled by his presence in the veranda outside the door to their apartment that it didn't even occur to them to invite him inside. So they were so captivated and stuck to their spot in the common aisle or the veranda, if you will. And so that was their very first interaction, and true to his word, he came and spent a lot of time the next day inside. I think by this time they had kept a chair for Swami with a nice sari as a drape over the chair, and of course my mom and my grandmother had made all the arrangements. So when he came in the next day, I think he spent quite a bit of time, spoke in detail about my paternal grandfather's work. He revealed his omniscience, if you will. Grandfather had had sustained an injury on this trip to Parthi, the very first trip, and it's one of the bones in the leg had broken, and the symptoms of that is just swelling and so on. And he was a very passionate physician, my father, and so when he examined him, he knew, or he thought he knew, that this was a fracture. So when my grandfather couldn't sit with folded legs in front of Swami, Swami allowed him to stretch his feet and sit in front of him. And my dad said he has fractured himself. Swami said it's not a fracture, it's a twist. And we all know the drumstick vegetable. So when you twist it, you see the fibers, right? It doesn't break into two pieces, which is what a fracture is a complete break. But this twist-like injury can happen only in like one bone in the leg, probably just the only bone in the body that's prone to that kind of injury. So in Telugu he said it's not fracture, it's a twist. So my dad's reaction was, how can it be a twist? There is a swelling, and but he didn't verbalize his skepticism. And true enough, when they went back to Bangalore or Chennai, had an X-ray done, it was a twist. It was not a fracture. So that also added to the entire experience of being in Parthi, talking to Swami, the amount of love and attention he showered on them, and being a man of medicine. He was a general practitioner. Eventually he qualified to be an anesthesiologist. How did Swami diagnose that without even touching? How precise his description of the injury. That really brought him closer and closer to Swami. And he was a man of action, service. That was his path. So he plunged himself wholeheartedly. He was not the one to sit in bhajans for long time. He would, of course, enjoy them immensely. And so he started organizing medical camps and a free medical clinic in Chennai under the name Sai Krupa. So every Sunday there used to be about 700 to 900 patients from different parts of Chennai that would come in and get free medical consultation and help. And Swami visited it number of times, blessed all the doctors, patients, and so on. And he also used to refer patients from Puttaparthi, saying, our doctors are there in Chennai, they'll take care of you, please go see them. Right? So what a great compliment to be told our doctors are there. Right?